My brothers and sisters, welcome to the last session of our training on conflict resolution.
While I get what I needed to present today, maybe there's someone who has an observation from the past 2 days of presentation. Maybe I need to give time to someone who may be having something that they may want to reflect on.
Any reflections, brethren, from where we started up to yesterday as Pastor Ngui gets ready?
For me, it's already helped a lot. I have a much better insight, and I know that I'm the beginning of the road to understand more difficult conflicts in the church, and they will be present in our church as mental health issues are just exploding. There are five times more mentally unwell people in the world, in the UK at least, than 10 years ago. So it demands professional help, and we are not as pastors there really yet, without further education. And we still have to know our limitations and what we can do and what we cannot do.
Yeah, and I think you are right. Mental health issues only aggravates the situation. Yes. It makes conflicts inevitable, and that is why, as pastors, you mentioned rightly that we don't know everything. We don't have the expertise. And that is why it's always good to recognize that and refer people. So refer people to where they need to get help. I think this has been coming out every time since we started. We are blessed to have Pastor Ngui,
yes,
and his team who are working on this, but also we are blessed to have mental health professionals who can also help.
Remember, today is landing the plane. That is the heading, and it's landing it safely, because you can if a pilot lands a plane without considering the impact it will have on its passengers, it can be damaging. So today, as we look at landing the plane safely, it's how do you end a conflict that has been ongoing. And sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, there are times when we as ministers are posted to, are given assignments in local churches that have had a lot of conflict going before we were there, and we inherited. How do you deal with it? Let me begin by saying that one of the wisdom that I was given by a senior minister in my life was, when you find a conflict in a congregation, don't ignore it, because it's going to make your life very hard. But if you can deal with it and bring it to a closure, find some support system, have support system. And some of the support system is from the elders, but you also need to be aware some of the elders might have been involved in those conflicts. So you need to be aware of who you are getting support from. Also from the ministerial secretarial department, it's a huge resource. And now in SEC we have Adventist mediation and conciliation services. We are thinking of beginning to charge churches, especially when churches have long-standing conflicts or major conflicts. But for educating, it's free. We do it for free. But when we come to do the conflict resolution in your churches, we will be asking for some donations so that the ministry can continue. Most of those who are trained now as mediators, we have trained mediators within SEC, and we have over 20. We have about 18 mediators who are trained, and among them we have 4 trained mediators, training mediators. So they can who have taken the train the trainer. So we have that in our midst. We also have a peacemaking course that we offer for 10 weeks at the School of Evangelism, and at the moment we are running that. I'm running that in area 2. We are in week 4, and there are some benefits that I don't know how the area finds it, but from the feedback that I've been having, some of those who have continued and are continuing with it are saying it's helpful in their lives and in the life of the church. So today, as we continue, let me look at some conflict pollutants, some of the things that may make it difficult for you to resolve a conflict and bring it to a good closure. Some of those are factors, or conflict pollutants are factors that clog and choke the climate of effective conflict management. They are elements that are not inherent in the conflict itself. They are not very obvious, but they distract from and complicate the process. This may obscure the nature of the problem, which makes focusing on the real issues very difficult. So, this happens even in our marriages. Sometimes, when something has happened, and before, instead of addressing the current issue, we get distractions from what has happened now, and we begin to go back and begin to make referral of what has happened in the past and how it has impacted people, and that sometimes can complicate. Or while you are resolving a conflict, another one occurs, and do you stop the one that you have been resolving or working on and go to others? And others that have a long history, have people who are not present because they either moved church or they passed on, or for certain reason they just don't want to engage in the process. Those can complicate conflict. But number 2 is the preferences of a principle. Sometimes they this is what I want. This is what I prefer. This is my preference. And we forget the principles that are behind it. One of those cases that might be you might think of, it's there is a church discipline to take place. We have done all we could within our church process to resolve the issue that needs to be resolved. But someone says, no, you can't discipline me simply because I would prefer to be received in church otherwise, but I'm not going anywhere. Or the principle is, when someone is in sin, you discipline them. That's the principle. But people may prefer, instead of being disciplined, let's just keep quiet about it and move on. Those who are involved think that having the conflict go according to the way they prefer things is more important than establishing some lasting means of resolving the conflict. Then number 3 is overblown expectations. expecting too much change too quickly. This does not help. As I shared either yesterday or the day before yesterday, I've sat in conflicts where children will be told, just say sorry and we move on. And that sometimes spills in, rather happens in a conflict where adults are involved. Let's just shake hands and get an end to this thing. But there's no agreement that has been reached, how we are going to move on from here. There are no boundaries that have been set. There are no, it's fluid. The situation remains very fluid. So if something else happens, we have no point of reference how to move forward because we did not put those measures in place simply because we were rushing. We wanted people to accept and move on because we think that creates peace, yet it doesn't. And another pollutant is negativism and joylessness. They have potential of conflict traps. These traps usually occur when circumstances predispose people to overreact to triggering events, usually displacing the original conflict. So it's like going back, where people, while conflict is being in the process of being resolved, something else happens and it just displaces what we were dealing with. And sometimes we pile them and we ignore sorting them out. Then we have the mushroom syndrome. Mushroom syndrome is where what occurs when unresolved conflicts have been left to grow in the dark until they become unmanageable. The mushroom syndrome is equivalent to what we call sweeping issues under the carpet. We're sweeping that under the carpet. So it's there, we know it's there, but we put it somewhere in dark place and leave it there. It will go away. Brethren, brothers and sisters, it doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. By the way, I don't know why mushrooms tend to do well in darkness, but there are conflicts that grow in darkness and they come to bite us. Poor problem ownership. When members or in parties who are involved in a conflict do not own their contribution in that conflict. Solving, they just don't want to own it. They say, you know what, it's a problem of so and so. I was involved, but I was a victim in that. But in every conflict, one of the things that I've discovered, and it's a harsh reality here, when two parties are involved in a conflict that remains unresolved, is because both of them have made some contribution. Maybe one has made 60% of the contribution, or even 70%, or even 90%, but the other party may have only 10% or less a contribution in that conflict. But the way we deal with it, we begin to blame the other parties around us instead of thinking of what has caused. There is number 7 there in between 6 and 7, and it is solving conflict before getting the data or the information. And I mentioned this story of King Solomon and the baby of where the two women one had smothered the baby. When a conflict has taken place and people bring their reports to us as pastors because of our position that we occupy, we need to have enough information, get enough data, enough information that will help you see the picture. You'll never see the full picture, but at least if you get enough information, it helps you to be able not to apportion issues, but to find the real issue behind what is causing. There are times when you sit in a conflict, in a place where a conflict is being resolved, and what you hear is what they have done. But when you ask, and it becomes generic, those terms are mentioned in a generic manner. You hear, oh, they really annoy me. Then when you ask deep something, just a little bit, not deep, not very deep, like what do they do that annoys you? They say they just annoy me. So you can't deal with that. That doesn't give you enough information. So you need to be able to have that place where you have enough data, you have listened to both parties, and both parties are aware that you have spoken to each party. But here, when you speak with each party to get more information, or sometimes it goes outside of the parties themselves, make sure that you let them know, you let the parties know, I'll be speaking to so and so because you have mentioned so and so in our in our conversation today. So I would like to understand their perspective also. So you are not going to be investigating, but they are aware that you are going to be hearing points of view from those other individuals. And sometimes you get very interesting comebacks. You hear someone say, oh, please don't speak to them. Just leave them. When you have mentioned somebody in a conflict, we don't have to leave, you leave them behind outside of that conflict resolution process. Something will arise and those individuals will be called in. And because you never had opportunity. And sometimes it's also gossip that leads for those names to be mentioned in and pulled in. Then there is the premature solutions to conflict, which can be as damaging as letting conflicts build up, because the failure of premature solution must be dealt with in itself, as well as additional problems when conflict is finally resolved. So when it's like taking antibiotics. When we are put in antibiotics by a doctor, and a doctor gives us a course of 7 days, and we take it for the first 3 days. 4th day, we feel I'm actually getting better. Then the 5th day, we say I'm not going to take any longer. The 2 days of not taking that prescription, prescribed medication, might put you back on the same illness. So and so it is when we reach premature solutions to a conflict. Then we have the last tags complex. The last tags complex is where an individual within a conflict situation, they want to be the last ones to give the final word. Everyone speaks, but they want to be, they have had opportunity to speak, but they want to say the final word because they think that is the best thing to do. So those are things that you need to watch over as you are dealing with conflicts, and you need to be aware that these things can happen. So why would a leader, and here I'm talking of us, be reluctant in engaging in a conflict that is taking place? There are several that I'm going to mention here. There are many. But one of them is lack of confidence in guiding the process. When you feel overwhelmed and you don't know how you are going to guide the process, it can make you feel very reluctant in getting involved. Fear of failure in getting acceptable, agreeable outcome. I don't know how they are going to behave. I don't know whether they are going to accept to come up with an outcome that is acceptable to everyone. And because I don't know how the outcome is going to look like, that fear paralyzes me as a leader, and I don't get involved. Lack of skills to guide those in conflict to find solutions to their conflicts. There was lack of confidence and lack of skills now. It can also be a challenge that may put a leader out of position to help with resolving or helping in a conflict situation. Closed eyes, ears, and closed heart ends becoming hard-headed and hard-hearted. When our ears and our eyes and our hearts are closed, it can be damaging. I remember one time in a church, there was a conversation that really left me feeling really thrilled by the situation. It was a simple thing, a conversation around use of musical instruments in church. And there were groups, but I think I felt like I closed my eyes and ears and heart to some extent, that it took away some of the young people I had treasured in that church. And so, but also there were other combination of factors that we have already looked at, and it didn't leave me in a better place. But it is a result of such happenings where when you discover your inadequacies, you find how you can deal with them so that you can be better equipped for future. Then there's the fear of criticism from some of the quarters within the church. Oh, I don't know what they're going to say about me. Then thinking that other people's needs and feelings aren't important. You know what? You deal with it. It's your problem. Sort it out. And you basically don't want to engage because you think it's their case. There's an African story that is told that once upon a time there was a rich man who had his wife, who had the infestation of rats. And when the rats, when the infestation occurred in his farm, he decided to sort out the rats. So he began laying traps. And as he was laying the traps, the rat discovered that traps were being laid. And the rat went and told the chicken, Mr. Chicken, can you go speak to the farmer? Because these traps that are being laid, they are dangerous and they can injure you. And the chicken said, we have lived in this farm for too long. Since you came into the farm, until you came into the farm, we have never had traps. So those traps are for you to deal with. And the rat went ahead and spoke to the goat, and the goat said, "That's your problem, my dear. Those traps can never kill me. They can only kill you." And the rat said, "Please, these traps are dangerous." It said, "It's your problem." Then the rat went to the cow and told the cow, "Rats are being laid in the farm, so you need to speak to the farmer." Then the cow said, "My friend, I can kick all of them out. They're not my problem, it's your problem." So that night, after the rat had discussion with all those animals in the farm, in the night, the trap sprang. And the farmer, knowing that something had been caught, knew that one of the rats was in the trap. So he went out and maybe he didn't carry his lamp. He went out to check what had been caught. And without knowing, he was bitten because what had been caught in the trap was a snake, not a rat, but it was caught by the tail. So it was able to bite him. When it bit him, he had to be rushed to hospital. And the story goes like, while I was in hospital, then there was need for him to when his wife visited, she was told, "Oh, your husband can do well with the chicken soup." So the chicken was slaughtered so that the farmer could have soup in hospital. And when he didn't get better after a few days, he was told, she was advised, you might do well with the goat soup. So the goat was killed. And unfortunately, he died. And in African context, when someone dies, you celebrate that life. So the cow was slaughtered to feed those who had come to the funeral. My friends, these issues are not, rather, don't think those issues of others are not your concern. We are part of them in many ways. It might be in a small way, but they can impact us too. Then number 7, this person, this leader may not want to get involved. So as the story I've just told, he is too preoccupied with his own problems. There are times when we have our own issues going on in our lives, too involved in other matters, or too tired. I don't have the energy, I don't have the strength to get involved. Or the other issues that are already happening within the congregation, and you can't oversee the resolution to this current issue or the ongoing matter, because you are already preoccupied with others. And church can be busy sometimes with some of these things. Afraid of emotions exhibited during the conflict. In conflict, when we sit in conflict resolution meetings, there are times when emotions are just too high. How do you manage them? Because you have been in those meetings, and you know certain individuals can really fight their corner, and the emotions that they exhibit, sometimes we even live without prayer because someone has just decided, you know what, I'm just too emotionally broken down, I can't pray. That can make a leader not feel very reluctant in engaging. Or past experiences with conflict and fear of possible litigation if you messed up, if you as a leader messed up. Some people, and we know we are living in a very litigating community within this environment. So I want to say that it is leaders' calling to harness conflict in order to serve the overall mission of the institution, the local congregation. And the story that I told, the experience that I told you of the instruments that needed to be used in music has become a major turn around for me. And that's a stepping stone for me, because I would not allow another conflict to go as long as I allowed that one to happen. Because it changed the mission of the church. A lot of mistrust grew within the congregation simply because there was that unresolved matter. And at the end of it all, I lost some of those young people. Conflict should not be allowed to exhaust its participants and paralyze the institution, but should be channeled away from infighting to confront challenges emerging from the environment. Where the natural outlet is thwarted, energies become turned inwards and become self-destructive. Since activities of evangelism, worship, and social action belong to the primary task of the church, we need to be able to keep the church focused on that. But we know sometimes if we are too much involved in that and neglect those in conflict, they can be paralyzed. There are specific instances of conflict that need to be resolved in good time. And this is important for you as a leader. When something has happened, don't ignore it. Don't ignore it. Find way of addressing it. And the earlier, remember the 5 stages of conflict advancement. If you remember that, and remember the other chart where we had the latent conflict, the open conflict, and the no conflict zones. If you keep those in mind, they will really help you, because when a conflict takes place, when we begin to resolve it, we don't have to rush to get to a solution. That's not the idea. Resolve it in good time. And don't delay it. Don't drag it for too long. and don't rush it. So be in time, be in sync with what is happening, and then new development. Because the longer we leave a conflict to take root, the more the church gets divided, because people begin to take sides with the individuals who are involved in that conflict. That's sometimes the natural trend, or others just withdraw and say, I'm not going to be part of this thing, and they disappear. So you never see them in the church again, and they never speak well of us as ministers. They never speak well of that congregation, and so they begin to find things that they will create, and some of them are very deceitful, so they create their own lies in order to advance their cause. Don't share with people who can't assist you in getting to a resolution. If something has happened and you need to share with people who can help you get to a resolution. Don't share with everyone. Remember, confidentiality is key. This is both Christian ethic and legal requirement in the country where we minister. Rather, there is need for genuine resolution to be arrived at, and this comes when communities trusting a gracious God who has created, reconciled, and empowered peoples for healthy interdependence give voice to all. So there is no one least member in your congregation who, when there is a conflict going on, you can ignore and say that one is not as important, and so and so. So you need to empower, you need to create, but above all, create environment that people can really get help. But above all, we need to trust God's grace. Those in power, and this I found this very important. Those in power lead wisely, relinquishing abusive power, using their appropriate authority to guide a group toward healthy, equitable collaboration and resolution to issues when they arise. You, as a pastor, are occupying a place of not only authority, but also of power. That office, you give something that you don't get when you're not in that office. And the elder cannot have that power you have simply by occupying that office. It doesn't matter how many years you have been there and how many years your elder has been a first elder for the period they have been. The office gives you power, immense power. And so it's important for you to work towards a result, or to find a way of using your office, not to manipulate, remember, but to help people come to a place where they can find harmony. We may never find it, but working towards it is important. Unresolved conflict, remember, it mutates by going under the surface, and sometimes it becomes very disruptive. The chart that I showed on day one, the first graph of the 4 areas of conflict, where there is open and where there is no conflict, where there is the one that is underground, where there is an open one, and where there is, those. Sometimes when we have unresolved conflict, they mutate. And this is the danger of keeping conflict going for a long time, or allowing it to go on for a long time. Because what happens, people forget what the original matter was, and sometimes they begin to attack personalities and the individuals instead of attacking the problem that has brought them to where they are. This conflict that has mutated sometimes fractures a team as people choose sides and try to build up their forces. Most of their forces are around them so that they can get the support that they need. It fosters competition, distrust, poor communication and low productivity. Unresolved conflicts cost a lot. Use of valuable resources to address and resolve conflict early and to improve communication becomes very necessary, as Scannell will state. Now, when a conflict, we have worked through a conflict, and we must bring a closure to it. We cannot leave conflicts open. So we need to bring closure to a conflict by creating agreements. And Lynn will argue that most leaders try to put off that day of reckoning for as long as possible, which only fosters resentment, frustration, and escalation of conflict. So when we have landed and have landed well, we need to know that we must bring closure. Closure is important. It's vital because it leaves those parameters and boundaries drawn, and everyone now knows how to deal with a future conflict, because conflict will keep coming. So when we as leaders do not land the plane safely and bring that closure, then the church can continue with simmering issues arising from the work we have done. And sometimes, if it's a conflict that has been very public, we may, after we have found solution, we may have to come back to church. For example, something happens in church in public, and this is something I did not know for many years. You have to bring it back to the public and bring it to a meeting where members would know that this matter has been resolved. That brings closure to the conflict. So I don't know if there's somebody who has a question or has a comment to make, or I will give you this moment to have your reactions to the presentation.
Yes, this information and knowledge is very valuable. Obviously, when we face an actual case, and we have never done it before, or not in that level, we need practice and we need help for that. So it is something when somebody is reading the map all the time in his lounge and never goes anywhere. So it is important and vital knowledge. But when we start to do it, we need guidance and help. And when we go through one or two situations, it is very true that we try to avoid to be involved, and we are happy that we are distanced ourselves from this kind of problems, believing that it will be sorted out itself. It happens, but it usually demands one person's death. Otherwise, it doesn't go away. So it is important to start with when the problem is not too big yet.
No, it's okay. And as I said, we have mediation doesn't always work. By the way, it's not a solution to all, but it gives us an opening, and for people to know that we care. There are times when we actually start conflict mediation, and while we are doing mediation, we discover that there's need for counseling, and we have to refer those individuals for counseling, because I'm not a trained counselor. I do pastoral counseling, as many of you will do, but we know its limitations. So I will refer to SEC counseling department, and I may just refer this one individual who I realize something might be deeper than what we are seeing on the surface, because we are not getting anywhere. And sometimes when people take those options, the church changes and they change, and we can experience. So we are there to support. We do not promise 100% success, but with prayer and willingness of individuals involved, a lot can be achieved. And sometimes, by the way, Pastor, it doesn't have to be those big successes. When we are in that place of conflict resolution or mediation, and we are talking and we are going through discoveries of what is happening, and we begin to make agreements, we may have 4 major issues to address. If we go through the first one and we're able to have an agreement on the first one, we celebrate it, because that one gives us momentum to go for to address the next one. And so sometimes it can be very time consuming, but we are there to support you, and we will give you all the support that we can. And where we can't, we will tell you, sorry, we can't fight on your own, but you're not going to be alone anyway. So we'll give you the support that as much as we can.
Thank you.
Maybe I need to share this with you before we go. A 7-step approach to finding resolution to working through a problem that may appear. The 7-step problem solving is where you number one, you want to define the problem, and you can't define it alone. You need to have listened to the parties involved so that you can define the problem. But while you are defining it, you need to be thinking of the end. Where do you want? How do you envision the end looks like? Is it where you want the church to have peace? That might be your number one goal, so that this matter doesn't infect other people. Or is it that you want those people to come to a place where they offer forgiveness for their contribution? You might have another one of reconciliation. But for me, when I begin to address to lead people through mediation, I don't do it with having in mind reconciliation, because most of the times reconciliation actually comes as a result of, it becomes an outcome of the successes that we get. And the reconciliation looks very different to different people. Some people will begin to reestablish communication. Others will say, no, I'm reconciled with you. We can do a lot of things together, but there are spaces that are not going to allow you to get into in my life. And that's still okay. So you need to have that in mind. You need to identify the options for solution. And also, remember, you're not going to identify alone. It is with those parties, working with those parties and supporting them to be actively involved so that they can identify. You're not going to identify for them. But as they talk, you help them to clarify options that may sound ambiguous. You need to evaluate, when you are leading out in that process, you need to evaluate alternative solutions. What are other possible solutions that we can have to this problem? You need to be very wide in those during the process. Then you need to decide on acceptable solution, and one or more or a combination of options that may be put on the table. Then you need to implement and develop an implementation or action plan. Who will do what and by when and how? So those are some of the things that you will need to establish in that plan, because that leads towards the closure of the issues that we are landing that plane safely. You need to develop a process for evaluating the results. So that needs to be included in the plan that we develop. Then you need to allow people to talk about the experience of the problem-solving process that we have gone through. So those are 7 steps that might be helpful to you. And I know when we do mediation, we're actually looking for those and seeing how the process progresses. Sometimes we go from 1, we can go from 1, go to 2, and or to 3, come back to 2. It doesn't have to be in that order, but you need to have that in mind as you work through it. Okay. Another question or any question? Any comment? Pastor Gabriel, my neighbor, how are you?
Yeah,
I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good, thank you.
thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, thank you so much, Pastor Ngui. Brethren, it's like now we don't have any other question. Do we have any other question? Any more question? Seems like we don't have any other question.
Pastor Dr. Ezron,
Yes.
we at SEC, we have been offering training for pastors in mediation.
Yeah.
And we have now two pathways.
Mhm.
One is using an American model,
Mhm.
and the other one is using British model.
Mhm.
But they have a lot of interacting points. We call it American because of the way the Americans do it. And usually when we have that, we organize for that training. We tend to get funding so that those who come on the course do not have to pay. But it's expensive because if you go on mediation training in the UK, mediation is expensive. But when we organize for the next cohort, by God's grace, we will let pastors know so that those who want can go on it. And sometimes some of these things become very awful in your personal life too. It's not just with others. There are times when I sit in a church board and I'm becoming very furious because of the way the members are working out through issues. And then I'm reminded by my training. I remember here you can also be a mediator at the same time. There's an opportunity for you to do something differently. And sometimes it pulls me back, even in my family. Yeah. So
yeah, thank you. So that is very good. They go for how long, Pastor? The training?
The training is 5 days.
Okay.
It's 5 days. Yeah.
So it's like some stage. It's a stage, and then if you want to proceed, you can then proceed after that.
Yeah, and you get certified. You register with the College of Mediators UK, and you can practice actually paid mediation.
After that 5 days training.
After the 5 days training, yeah.
Okay, pastors, you have heard. I think that is something good. Pastor Ngui will communicate the dates to us and lead us through that. So that we can benefit. The good news is that there are some funding for that course. Thank you, Pastor. I think even me, I would be interested in that, and many of us. So there seems to be no other question or observation. And if that...
I have one question, if it's possible to ask.
Yes,
Pastor
yes,
Sam.
Yes, please.
What would you do, Pastor, if let's say after the elections in the church is split and people are angry? Some people, there are some groups you mentioned in your presentation. This could happen in some occasions. What should we do as pastors after this situation? What should we do to proper manage this conflict? What should be the next steps in this occasion? What do you believe?
Pastor Gabriel, are you talking of local church elections?
Yeah. That's right.
Okay. Yeah. Apparently, there is one of the training that I do for pastors with pastors, and we look at times when you really anticipate conflict is going to occur within your local church. And it's very interesting because within the Adventist church, I've realized every time we go through church elections, I'm anticipating a major conflict to take place. And it comes 3 or 4 ways. Number one, people who wanted to be elected in certain positions and they have not been elected. People who have been elected and they decline. It can cause you trouble too in church. There are also moments when people do not buy into your vision, so you have headache with getting people to buying that vision you have. Then you have I can't remember the other one, but there are several. Now, when we come towards church election, Pastor Gabriel and all of us who are here anticipate you are going to have to deal with conflict. Anticipated. Now, anticipating prepares you to know you are not going to be running away. And the other thing is, you don't have to justify everything that happens. You don't have, because you are not the only one you are not the one electing. Now, one of the issues that I found in our church was, in this particular church, they used to sit when they knew it was the fourth quarter. They would sit together and create lists of leaders. So you would have this group having their leadership team, the first elder, and all the main officers, especially church board members. Then you have another group, and what happened in that church? I did not allow them to go through the pain of drawing the lists. So I told them election is going to be totally different this year. And they asked me, what do you know about us? I said, I don't know anything, but I'm assuring you, as a new minister, it's going to be different. Because the way I look at election is going to be different from the previous ministers. And the question was, don't you use the same church manual everyone else uses? I said, yes. But there are few things that I'm going to be looking into. And that threatened the church. The church felt threatened by a young minister who has just come from college. And I thank God, because that was one of the most successful years we had. Because after that election, a member from the community came and said, Pastor, you saved me. I don't know what you did with your church. People did not come to sit in my house to draw lists. And I asked him, are you a member? He said, no. My wife is a member. I'm not a member. And I've always refused to come to this church because of the politics that I hear around election. But one of the things that I use is use the church manual faithfully. The church manual can be a great defender of us as ministers. The church manual states that if someone doesn't believe in our doctrines, they can't hold position. If someone doesn't return tithe, they don't hold position either. And when you use that tool wisely, you may have very few leaders, but you'll have lesser troubles. So anticipate, when there is conflict arising, just sit with people and listen to them, wanting to know why they are dissatisfied or what you can do. The other tool that I do proactively, I haven't used it lately, because Pastor Nyambane is aware. We have used it once in Maranatha. It's where you pass, where you draw the church officers, and you take people's desires of the office they need to serve. So you draw something like a piece of paper, and on that paper you draw the name of the individual. Then you draw the offices they have served in, and the offices they would be willing to serve in the coming year. But you also have to declare a disclaimer that by you putting out an office that you really want to serve in is not a guarantee that you are going to be assigned that office. We might have to consider your previous experience if we need you to serve in that. And I hope you're going to be willing to do it. And sometimes, actually, that begins to prepare the church. And I find that tool very useful, especially when people return that sort of survey. It really helps you. And you minimize the infight that goes on. And also take the church through what happens during election of the church officers. Tell them what you are going to be looking for. People are willing, people who are going to give time, people with experience, or people who may not have experience, but they are willing to be trained, so that when people, that is preparing the church, so that when you bring the report, the church is already aware that nothing has been done underhandedly. It's not family electing family.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
and
Pastor.
yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Pastor, for that. And Gabriel and all of us, we know how important it is to use the church manual. And this is very important. There are some people who just decide to ignore church manual. They say, oh, set it aside there. I'm experienced, what and what. I'm not going to use the church manual. And God knows why he guided this church to come up with that document. What I've seen in my life is that in my ministry is that any moment people deviate from the church manual, just give them a few months. Any moment pastors deviate from using church manual, give them a few months and they will be in a terrible mess, whether they are senior, whether they are what, they'll be in a terrible, terrible mess, which they may not recover well from. So what has helped me is sticking to the church manual, doing things the manual way, especially when I go to election in the church. I have mastered the church manual, but when I go to election, I read again those portions that are related to elections, because that's where most of the conflicts arise, as Pastor Ngui has pointed out. So we should be in the habit of always wanting to stick to the document that has been given to guide us, the church manual. So, brothers and sisters, thank you so much. We have come to an end, and I want to invite us to all thank Pastor Ngui for the wonderful presentations that he has given us. I hope you will all join me in thanking Pastor Ngui for the good work that he has done to us. Yeah, so I hope the information that we have received will be of help, great help to us. It's not easy, and I can't say that the solutions will come overnight, but God is there to give us the strength. And the office is there to help you if you're in any problem. And Pastor Ngui is also there as an expert if you need to speak with him confidentially, or you want to invite him with this team to give you a hand. He's always here. So let's feel free to interact with each other and see how we can support each other. So thank you so much, Pastor Ngui. Thank you, pastors, for your time.